welcome. My name is Renee Forsyth. I'm the Director of Professional Development for Lyme Connect. And as a visual description, I am a white female with shoulder length brown hair. And I am sitting in front of a lime green branded background. We're thrilled to have you join us today for this installment of Voices of Lyme, which is going to focus on a candid conversation for Autism Awareness Month. And because we thought this conversation was so important, we were happy to open it up to the public. And that may mean that many of you are not familiar with who we are at Lyme Connect. So just to provide a little background, we are a not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to rebrand disability through achievement. We do that by attracting high-potential professionals and university students, including veterans, with all different types of disabilities into our network. Once an individual joins our network, we prepare them with the essential tools and confidence that helps them achieve their goals. We also connect our network members for scholarships, leadership programs, internships, and full-time careers with the world's leading corporations, our corporate partners. There is no fee to join our network, so if you are joining us and you are an individual with a disability, we encourage you to join the network and take advantage of all of our resources. We also support our corporate partners in recruiting, onboarding, developing, retaining, and promoting all employees who have disabilities. Several of our panelists are joining us from our corporate partner companies, so we're thrilled to have them. Together with our corporate partners and our network members, we celebrate the strengths and talents of people with disabilities. So that's a little bit about us. I'd love to turn this conversation over to the panel, and I'm going to introduce our moderator. Our moderator is Kurt Jobst, and he is a passionate advocate and leader for neurodiversity, inclusion, and empowerment. As a global president and co-founder of the Neuroforce BRG at Salesforce, he is dedicated to breaking down barriers, fostering understanding, and paving a path for the neurodiverse community to thrive in society. A storyteller by nature, Kurt shares his own experiences as a late diagnosed autistic professional. Kurt is focused on creating a workspace where differences are celebrated and embraced. He draws on his backgrounds in both education and technology to provide him with a deep understanding of the challenges faced by the neurodiverse community, as well as the potential they possess to contribute uniquely to the world. He has been a featured speaker at several events, not limited to, but including the world's largest tech conference, CES, Enabling Disability In, as well as Salesforce's annual event, Dreamforce. So we're thrilled to have Kurt with us today, and I'm happy to turn this discussion over to Kurt. Welcome, Kurt.
Hi there, everyone. Kurt Jobst. I am a visual description. I am a very late 40s Caucasian male with less hair than I'd like, clear frame glasses, and I'm wearing a light colored button-up shirt. My role at Salesforce is that I'm a customer accessibility advisory lead. That's my day job, but my other job is that I'm the co-founder and global president of Neuroforce, which is an employee resource group for neurodiversity and neurodivergent employees and family. So what I want to do is I want to kick it off and introduce our panelists. So let's get started with Susheen.
Hey everybody, I'm Suchin. I'm based in Jersey City and I work for Citigroup as a technology analyst in their and 2-year analyst program. So I'm a Asian, I'm an Indian male with black hair and wearing a green shirt right now. And right now I sit on a team that does data engineering within the services technology group here in Jersey City. So post reorganization, City has moved all of technology into basically one area in the New York metro area. So I sit on a team directly there.
Thank you, Suchin. Next up, Tyler.
Trying to figure out if I need to unmute myself. I muted myself. Hi. My name is Tyler. Okay, yeah, I'm good. So my name is Tyler Valdron. I am calling in from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Um, I am visual description, wearing an amaranth blazer, light blue shirt, glasses, sandy blonde hair, and a beard. My current job is in financial regulation. My previous job was in corporate risk management, so risk management, and I've also done previous risk management work for the federal government and also like in the private sector, so other private sector jobs other than banks. So I've always kind of been in risk. I've always been fascinated in risk and history, bringing together kind of mathematical and qualitative risk management concepts, as well as kind of the regulatory and national level. So yeah, looking forward to talking to everybody about my experience in the autistic spectrum.
Thank you, Tyler. And certainly, last but certainly not least, Selena.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Selena Sparks, she, her. For a visual description, I am a white trans woman. I have dark blonde hair. I am in a blurry white background. I am also wearing a black hoodie. Um, I am based in Seattle, Washington, and I am a senior associate with EY, with their Neurodiversity Center of Excellence. I have been with the firm going on 7 years.
Fantastic. So let's kick this off. And what we're going to do is go around the room and ask a few questions. So first off, Suchin, if you could tell us about your autism journey from diagnosis to how you navigate daily life and uncertainty.
I've been officially and clinically officially diagnosed autism since I was 3 years old, and basically it was kind of it was a little bit of a shock to my parents. I mean, of course, I was too young at the time to understand that, but growing up, I faced a lot of challenges, mainly socially in elementary and mainly middle school and a little bit early high school. So, like where I went to school in like basically inclusive classes. So they were, I mean, a lot of kids didn't really understand that I was different from them, and I kind of was made to feel like inferior according to like my differences and my and just the fact that I had autism because I used to struggle with grasping a lot of social cues and how to navigate conversation. I did have friends too, but I needed a decent amount of help from basically my teachers and my parents to help facilitate said interactions. So it was hard for me alone to do it. Like because other children my age were able to do it by themselves, but I was a little bit developmentally behind in that front. So I was able to so basically I navigate it was kind of a little bit of a harder time. It was my elementary and mainly sixth and seventh grade for middle school. However, high school I mean by the time entered high school, I had a solid idea of like where my strengths were and where my weaknesses were in high school. So I know naturally I feel like I'm a very social guy more so than more like on the average to compare like the average person with autism. I feel like I'm a little more social. So in high school, I decided to basically put myself out there and make myself known by running for the class treasurer. So this was about 10 years ago and I was in ninth grade. And yeah, so I made it a lot. I navigated my daily life through that, and it helped me gain a lot of traction and identity within school. So yeah, but mainly where I really started to feel like I got a groove going was early high school, mid high school, and eventually to college, and up to now too. But yeah, I would definitely major piece of advice I would give is just keep having faith bound if you as long as you keep on like trying and pushing, eventually you're gonna succeed. I'm not It's not a guarantee, unfortunately, but you're more and more your chances of succeeding are gonna increase as you keep practicing, especially navigating through your daily life as a person with autism.
Fantastic. Would anybody else on the panel like to talk about their journey, diagnosis to how you navigate daily life?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. So I was diagnosed as a child. Growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s as a child with autism in Florida, no less, was quite the experience. A lot of stuff having to be learned, a lot of stuff having to be learned on my own. Um, and then in 2015, I left Florida on my own. I moved to California to try to finish college and get a jump start in the tech sector in Silicon Valley. That proved a lot harder, or just as hard as one might be expecting. But eventually, I came across EY in their neurodiversity department. um, they had a hiring process that was very different from a typical hiring process, but was more tailored for individuals that are on the spectrum, such as myself. Um, and I mean, the rest is history, right? So I ended up getting the job along with a team of 20 other people. All of us were in the same hiring process together, so we got a very close, I guess, introduction, you could say. Um, and then from there, it's just been a matter of sort of learning from each other how to best to communicate and work through any obstacles or differences that we might have had or have.
Fantastic. Tyler, would you like to share a bit about your journey as well?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in a pretty slow part of Canada called New Brunswick. Um, and I was diagnosed pretty early. I guess the twist is that I wasn't really made aware of my diagnosis until high school, but I was being treated like subtly since elementary school. There are other mental illnesses in my family, so it was, I mean, not a bad kind of secret that, like, as a child, you're audited, I guess, for a bunch of different things. And that was kind of what picked up. Unfortunately, nothing more difficult. So that kind of gave me an interesting experience, which I guess I'll just work into my other questions because um, it was harder to kind of accept that in high school, thinking having had a different perception of myself. But at the same time, it also kind of allowed me to like try to participate in a lot of things like at an earlier age that probably improved my overall social ability. So I played every team sport. I'm only really good at one or two though. I did a lot I tried to do a lot of things. I was very involved in my family's mega church, I guess you'd call it, and things like that. So it definitely gave me an opportunity early on to kind of like be myself, but also like to develop those social skills, as challenging as it was. And then, deciding what I wanted to do with my diagnosis after was also probably more challenging. But yeah, it's just a different way of coming about things. Thanks.
Fantastic. I'll share a little bit about my own. So in the intro, it did say that I was late diagnosed autistic, but interestingly enough, I was actually early diagnosed as neurodivergent. Around age 8, they identified me as ADD. I often joke that I'm old enough that this was before the letter H was invented. But I'll pause for laughter. Um, but yeah. So as I grew older, that diagnosis didn't really seem to fit into who I was, and it was kind of almost let go, and they told my parents that I would eventually grow out of it. Obviously, I didn't grow out of who I was, and I had a college or a high school counselor that once told me I would be more successful in life if I could be a lot less like myself. What they were truly saying was um, didn't come from a place of harm. They were trying to tell me that, in a way, I don't fit the mold into what is typically successful. So I had a tough time being successful, and I kind of modeled myself off different people who were. And it wasn't until actually after having children and going through a divorce that I had discovered that um, I actually aligned closer to what was known as autism and how that diagnostic criteria matured. Um, and eventually went for the test and got that diagnosis. And actually, interestingly enough, I came so prepared that they stopped the diagnosis mid testing. They're like, "You're good. You've got enough notes. We'll call you autistic. It's fine." So it was just an interesting a piece of knowledge because I had often referred to myself as someone with a broken brain. Um, I would always try to do something, try to fit in, the way I saw seen other children trying to fit in, and it just wouldn't quite be right. So it was, always being the square peg in the round hole. So it wasn't until many, many years later that learning that, this really is a different way of existing and different way of thinking. Some people often say we have a different operating system than most for those who work in technology and with neurodivergence. So thank you all for sharing. And Tyler, we're going to pick on you for the next question, which is what strength strategies and self-regulation tools have you discovered through being neurodivergent?
Thanks. Great question. I think it's mentioned a lot in these at Lime, and I think that's great. What attracted me to Lime at the time that I joined was kind of the focus on like the forward thinking, like the positives, rather than just kind of like this is a diagnosis, right? In fact, I had actually been kind of tired of that in university, like just having like an accommodation. So I actually dropped it in university for my master's, and whether that was a good idea or not, I did okay. But like I was that was kind of the environment I was coming into as a young professional, thinking, I'm not so sure about this. So Lime's kind of perspective, that was like more like this is what you bring. That was like very appealing to me at the time. So, I mean, bringing forward things a few years, I'm again early mid career now. Um, I think when I started, and I'm sure it still gets mentioned. I haven't briefed this with anyone here in terms of like what we currently say, but the word complexity gets mentioned a lot in the autistic context and the ability to grasp complexity. I think like to bring it forward to today, the new word for me is like the bewilderment of complexity that everyone has, right? And so instead of talking about, oh, understand complex things, like people all have things they understand better than others, right? And on the autistic spectrum, you could probably say you have a bit of a deeper end of that, but to me, what I've realized is it is that kind of energy, right, that comes behind it that can sustain someone longer. And so, my background is in risk management and regulation are things that people often hate to think about, or but even if you can grasp it, it's that bewilderment, right? And it's changing now more and more because of AI, because of just like a more interconnected world that we live in. And so I've realized even now, like, I'm not super young, but I find that I pick up not just AI, but also I have the ability to sift bad AI content or fake AI content better, and use the tool for what it is worth, uh, pretty well, even like in a kind of abstract context that I'm in risk and policy. So that's kind of like in terms of a strength that I think is relevant today, is it's not just like, complexity. And obviously I have my pet issues that I definitely grasp that, but I do find that like I have that energy to keep going and to keep tabs on and to continue to be critical again in a world where there's a lot of false information and misunderstanding. I think that's like what I look back on, especially these days, as like a major strength. In terms of just general strategies, I've picked up, um, not to like recycle, but like just understanding your strength and weaknesses is like really important. Like sure, you don't have to like go around again communicating all your weaknesses, and that's kind of the difference between like, here's my strength versus like a strategy, right? But there is a strategy that I have, where I really try to like maximize the areas that I'm likely to succeed in, and I try to delegate in areas that I'm not likely to succeed in, right? And obviously, if you're at a lower level in your team, like that looks more like collaboration or managing up. But these are words that I think are really important to think about if you're on the spectrum and you're in the workforce. Is people might already be skeptical of your ability to delegate or to collaborate or manage up. And so, if you can do that, and you can show success in that, I think you're kind of you're double dipping, right? You're saying, hey, like you were skeptical of my ability to work on a team, but here I'm working on a team, or I'm maybe even taking more risks to like collaborate. And obviously, like everyone wants to see that level of collaboration, right? And it's important for most all success, right? Um, Lastly, in terms of self-regulation, these are just like personal tips. But know your ideal working space is just important. And I do find that most companies these days, like whether you communicate as a diagnosis or not, are pretty understanding about that, right? So for me, yeah, like I try to minimize distraction, but I also don't like to be too far away from people because I do like to collaborate, right? And so I just try to communicate that. I do have like a lot of kinesthetic tics. So like if I'm stressed, I'll try to get up and move and take a walk. And I really enjoy working in like a downtown environment. So that kind of helps, right? Um, and when I do stuff like that, like I guess my perspective is always like I take a breath and I try to like kind of regulate. And then my kind of double down on that is like if I'm feeling well after, I'll go talk to a coworker about something just work related, or semi-work related to kind of like bring back that social element if I'm feeling like more composed. So I'm kind of like both making sure that I'm not isolating too much, but I'm also like taking the time to regulate. And in my case, it's like a very kinesthetic thing. So I walk around and inside or outside the office. Yeah, I feel like everyone has good answers to this, so I'm going to pass the mic.
Well, I mean, I just want to call out a couple things that you've highlighted, Tyler. You did a great job talking about kind of your strengths and weaknesses. And people that are neurodivergent often are referred to as having spiky profiles, meaning that they're extremely good at some things and have some larger gaps on other things. So we have just a if anyone else, either Selena or Tsuchin would like to come off and just quickly give us, in 30 seconds, what self-regulation tools you use, I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, Tyler makes a great point. Being able to have the ability to step away, maybe go for a walk, is always great. Personally, I'm a big fan of music. Being able to, just listen to music can really help calm the mood, whatever mood I may be in, if there is a mood at all. That is definitely something, is also a technique that I really and really use a lot.
I can also chime in too. I like Selena just said, she brings up a great point that walking can really help like basically self-regulate. So whenever I notice myself like feeling like I don't know, like nothing, it's just not like it's just not gonna go anywhere. I usually just remove myself from the situation. Would be like whether it be like an argument with a friend or family. I'm just be like I just I like to take walks, and also I also am a runner too, so I use that for like de-stressing and just letting out a lot of like anger and negative energy. And I come back I usually take like about 45 minutes to an hour, and I come back like with a much better perspective and like at least calmer as I know as I can vent it out in kind of a way that I'm passionate about, which is movement.
Great. So let's build right off of that. What workplace accommodations have helped you thrive? And I will say, so at Salesforce, we separate accommodations, meaning things that could cost the company money, from success enablers, things that are self-service and may not cost any money. So based on that, what accommodations or success enablers do you use? And I'm going to start with Suchin. Um, as to what helps you thrive.
Well, I personally, I can focus a little better with a little bit of like coffee shop style noise. So, usually my manager has approved me to sit in the break room area because I like hearing like a little bit of like a slight chatter, but nothing like too loud. So I usually just sit there and I work upstairs. They have a laptop as well, so I can work. So I can like work. I can work portably if needed. So it's kind of more like a success enabler.
Perfect. Tyler, Selena, what helps you become successful?
Yeah, for me, I think I mean I guess I already mentioned it, but like environment is really big. I found over the years, structuring my day. So like I like calendars, I like spreadsheets anyway, so I do that, and I'm working on again what I think are the more useful parts of AI, like agentic AI as well. Like so that all kind of like helps me with my different projects and working with different because I'm now like project manager, so working with different teams and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, like I think the only like other thing I want to say is like be strategic. Like you don't have to put yourself out there on every file, right? Like, and also like I want to acknowledge it, and maybe that's my rough background, quote unquote. But like not every job you're gonna have is gonna be like a Fortune 500 company that has this figured out, right? It's just not like I can certainly speak to like different parts of government have different levels of this figured out. And sometimes like you gotta look at like where your management team is and like try to work with them. Like sure, like in an ideal situation, like they have an obligation and like especially if you have like your papers and I do, like you can take different approaches, but you can also be strategic in the short term. You could be like, you know what, like I'm just gonna come and tell you I don't work on this desk and it's gonna help my process maybe like in the next six weeks, like that's gonna make everyone feel a lot better. Instead of understanding the trying to do the process, right? So like I've been strategic in different ways at different times, and I generally find it's good, and that you also don't have an obligation to explain everything to everyone all the time.
100%. Selena, what helps you?
Yeah, so I would also just note what Tyler said. That's something I need to practice a little bit is not over explaining. It's not always necessary. Um, no, so for me, I'm very blessed and privileged and grateful to be able to work from home. So having that space to myself where I can just sort of work freely, do my own thing, has been great. When I worked in the office, we have at EY, we had these private spaces. I believe they were called GITs or JITs. They were a very little small sort of cubicle, but very private and have thick windows so as to kind of really remove any outside sound. Um, and not just neurodivergent individuals, but anybody, if they're maybe there's a lot of noise or whatever, and they're getting stressed out and they really need to focus on their work. They could just pop into one of those rooms, take as much time as they need, do what they got to do, and just have that space to themselves. That was always an accommodation I'm very was used a lot for sure.
Fantastic. For myself, I use noise canceling headphones, pretty heavy duty ones, for my auditory processing disorder. I also work from home, like Selena, and have actually for 17 years. So this isn't just a newer thing. I use accommodations when I travel. Um, because sometimes I can become overwhelmed and my energy can run out very quickly. So I make sure I use different accommodations for that. Um, and then I also use some software that we have here at Salesforce that's offered to us. So there's a range of different accommodations that are available. And building off of that, one accommodation could be, or one successful enabler could be um, how you communicate with your team and spelling that out for your team. So, Selena, can you tell us how you manage communication with colleagues and supervisors and what strategies help you through your most difficult days?
Um, yeah, so the thing, what's lovely about the NCOE is as a team, we've really put a focus on how we communicate with each other. Um, some of those methods include how we give projects to team members, including myself. Often we provide it in a format that is very broken down, can provide a sort of step by step or just those very action items and bite-sized chunks, so it's a little easier to understand and kind of decide where you want to go from there. We've found that a lot of myself included, again, neurodivergent and employees are really like that approach. We also set up the beginning of projects in ways where we're able to meet with the client directly, ask them questions, receive questions from them, and really communicate with each other and try to understand each other's needs. Um, and then another thing we do is we really kind of consider some of the biases that people have, the sort of societal norms, expectations. So, for example, in the hiring process, when you're expected to shake the person's hand, give them a firm handshake, and maintain that direct eye contact, which is not something is very uncomfortable for someone on the spectrum. And unfortunately, when you have that interaction and you don't perform to the standard, it can leave a lasting impression. And so one of the things we also do is coach clients and things like that, and kind of pointing those things out and challenging them to catch it and sort of set those biases aside. Um, as for me, when I'm having a difficult day, again, being able to step away and just take a breather. I love Arizona sweet tea. Oh, I blurred it, but Arizona sweet tea. So being able to just drink a little bit of that, and if not, just some water, can go a long ways. And then if I'm in a situation where I can't really step away, being able to just put my headphones in, tune everything out, listen to some music, can just make all the difference.
Fantastic. Let's move ahead. What advice, this one's for you, Tyler. What advice do you have for allies, parents of neurodivergent students, or companies, things like recruiters, leaders, etc., about ways to support students as they transition from a university setting to the workplace? What would you tell those parents?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and it's also a very difficult topic because autism is a spectrum, so like there is no like sure advice, like especially for parents when you don't maybe have the full picture as much as you might want to. I'm also in a unique, infamous situation where I have what's called what is it, three under two. So I have who's now a 2.5 year old, and I have two twin daughters as well, who are 7 months. So it has actually made me think about this. You know, I don't have a kid in university, but I also am close enough to the university experience as a youngish parent. So I'll just try to summarize some key things. So this is like very challenging because it involves like the amount of resourcing one has, like as an individual, as a family. But I think that as much autonomy as possible, as much as, especially if it's in a relatively safe or there's like safety checks, is generally like pretty desirable. And obviously like there's a level of like again checks and balances with that always. But I've concluded, having talked to other autistic professionals, that like generally speaking, like those opportunities to be autonomous with whatever the safety level is were very, very constructive, right? For me, like I also think, and it's related, but especially in the current environment where there's like, I mean, especially in, I guess Canada, but probably the US too, like a lot of discussion about like marks inflation, that a lot of parents of autistic children and kind of allies are probably like really stressed about that and are, taking the accommodations and going through this process like to get that, edge, like to make sure that, we're getting to the next thing, we're getting to the next thing, like getting the right marks and so on. But in my experience, like to the point where you're actually talking about like university and the workforce, a lot of vocations, um, the marks become like more secondary. Like it's important to have them, but I think that transition can throw people off. So my parents were fixated on that, and I think I missed opportunities to have professional experience that would have been more useful. because the advice was like, well, only get like a job if it's like related to your research. Because I was in, I transitioned into kind of higher, like more policy stuff, but I had the marks to do physics and physics research, so I had a physics research job in first year, right? But I think it's just have know who you're trying to support and know if like where they're going and like try to be aware that like at a certain point you can have amazing marks and get a lot of interviews. I have a lot of it get on a lot of interviews, but those interviews can be challenging, especially if it's like you don't have the job experience and or someone you give someone the wrong impression, like you have ticks. Well, two things, like having the job experience gives you more confidence, but also they're going to look at your resume and be like, oh, well, this person's worked on a team before, right? So there is a transition from just like purely succeeding through marks and like all the kind of strategies that go with that to like the workforce. Even like in the research field, it was like not as much marks, it was like publication, working on teams, things like that. So that's just like I think two things I think are really crucial to consider. In terms of recruiters, I've found that most recruiters that are aware of all this like do a good job, right? I think it's just the thing I've noticed the most is um, kind of the setting, right? Um, so, just be in listening mode or be open-minded to like what is the setting that is most likely for that person to bring themselves in a way that doesn't like derail or throw off. Like again, I have a lot of physical nervous tics. So like I'm usually more successful in phone calls. I almost always get the interview. I've, done so many, but like I'm usually more successful in phone calls than in person, even though like I love to work in person and I'm very happy in the office and things like that. But it's a very tense time when two people meet, like you're the recruiter, it's not just like your opinion, right? It's like the team themselves setting the stage for that. If you know that person's challenges is like pretty important, right? Because it could set the relationship. So I think others have thoughts on this, so I'll share my time.
Thank you, Tyler. Actually, what we're going to do is take one more question that we already have, and then we're going to open up to the audience. But interestingly enough, Tyler, to call out a common phrase, people often say, if you know one autistic person, you only know one autistic person. Uh, I, I don't interview well on the phone at all. I don't interview well remotely. I'm great in person, and it's funny. So it's interesting to see. Um, the ebbs and flows between everyone. So this is actually for everyone. If you'd like to answer within, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to do so, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. We got some great questions in Q&A. We're going to go through those. But for everyone, starting with, we'll start with Suchin. How do you engage senior management in championing for the neurodivergent staff who excel with alternative work environment and culture? Basically, how do you get senior managers to allow us to work in ways that is atypical?
Okay, so I'm gonna start this off from my college experience. So every quarter, I used to send emails to my register, like for my registered classes, I used to send emails to my professors indicating that I have a disability and that I might need certain accommodations, like testing in a separate, like testing with the Disability Resource Center. And this translates to like work by the fact that I basically like. At least I directly inform my reporting manager on paper that I have autism and I might exhibit these different traits, and I may or may not need certain. Most of the
Uh-oh.
time, they're very like friend.
Keep going, Suchin. You're
Oh,
having network issues.
oh, yeah, it's my building's Wi-Fi. It's unfortunately nothing I can do about it. But yeah. So it was like I basically I tell most of the time, like 99% of the time, they're very accommodating and friendly about it. So like I still do that up to this day. Just because like I feel like it can only benefit you if you inform people as you go ahead, because nobody's able to read your mind.
Fantastic. Celine, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, back when I worked security, I had a district manager who told me and a coworker that, if you want something from higher ups, you sell it to them. And I hated that idea, But in my 7 years of experience, and beyond just EY as well, with senior management, that is sort of the case. And when it comes to selling this idea, it's nothing speaks better than results. And there are several companies with specialized neurodiversity teams that have shown that not only can someone who is neurodivergent excel in the workplace, but the work we would provide is invaluable. And I would also note that in general, not just for neurodivergent people, but in general, when you provide people the space and the means to be who they are and to be comfortable, and you act with just a simple level of understanding, morale goes up, work quality goes up, everybody comes out on top.
Fantastic. I'm going to give a shout out to EY as well. Here in Chicago is a good friend of mine, and they did a fantastic. I'm sure you're a part of this neurodiversity at work paper that is out and it's public, so you can look at it and really learn about how neurodivergent folks really excel in the workplace in various ways. So definitely check out that paper. Tyler, you're last on this one. How do you engage senior management in championing for neurodivergent staff to have alternative work environment and culture?
Um, I think, well, the first thing is to identify if there is like a process or a plan, like, right? Like, so you identify that, you identify if there's like a working group. And again, that shows, again, it's similar to what people are saying, like if you can sell the positive of it, like, so the second question they'll have is like, so what are you doing for that about that? Like, or, again, you see this like in some companies, it's like, oh, you guys reported that like this isn't working, so let's have a working group. You guys can join it, right? But as much as like we wish things were easier than that, like that is often like the response. So like, be ready to like provide actionable ideas, right? And try to make the best of it, right? Like it, because that maybe that shows something else, right? Um, and yeah, like it, be aware of like the level of resourcing, right? Like the options that might be on the table to accommodate what you're doing, or like what you think is like a better working solution, or again to highlight kind of like a different way of approaching things. Most people are open-minded about that. It's just like they're always going to be thinking about like resourcing and whatever constraints they have. So being sensitive to that does help, right? I mean, it's great. Like again, when I worked at TD, like it's like a tier one, four, 500 company. Like there was lots of resources, lots of options, things like that, and that was great. But not every organization is like that. So you just have to kind of read the room as best you can.
Fantastic answer. All right, so we're going to move on to audience questions. I'm going to moderate this. So if you have more questions from the audience, now is your time to open up and type it in the Q&A section. If you type it in chat, it may get overlooked. So I'm going to read one right off the top that actually I'm going to answer because I've done this many times. What kind of documentation would you advise submitting to HR and direct managers in order to receive workplace accommodations? And the answer is simple. Sometimes it's really the documentation that your company requires, and every company is slightly different. But one thing that I will stress, and this is often overlooked, is at no time do you need to provide a diagnosis to get accommodations. You don't have to say, because I'm autistic, I need blank. What you say is really the things that are not working for you and why you need them. So, for example, because of my auditory processing disorder, um, uh, due to auditory processing, I need noise canceling headphones, or due to overwhelm or dysregulation, I need to have travel accommodations. So at no time do you actually need to put a diagnosis in your documentation, and that can sometimes remove the stigmas that go into that documentation. Is there anyone else who'd like to talk about something they've done? Otherwise, we can move on to another question. All right, we'll keep moving. All right, this one's a tricky one. I'd love for somebody to take a risk on this one. Any advice for those navigating on DHD, which is autism and ADHD, for those who don't know, when your parents dismiss this for you specifically? The thought is that I'm just not trying enough, or I don't want things badly enough. I wasn't diagnosed until later in life, and life has been a struggle. So, how do you work with your parents? They could be a tough crowd.
I'm someone who is does not talk to their parents anymore. And growing up, there uh, was a lot, again, a lot of stigma, um, and being dismissed. Um, I would say, for starters, don't let it get to you. Um, you kind of have to, at that juncture, you really have to kind of advocate for yourself, and really try to pave the way forward. Um, you know, you are your best ally, but you can also be your worst enemy. Um, I would also say there are a lot of resources out there, a lot of free resources out there. Um, I highly recommend looking into it, different, how to approach hiring process, how you can best prepare. It really comes down to the best thing you can do is just be as prepared as possible. And, sometimes that won't be enough. That's the unfortunate reality, and there's not much you can really do beyond that except just doing the best you can on your side of things. Um,
Great
and again,
answer.
just preparation is key.
Great answer, Selena. Here's another question, and it is this is a pretty heavy one, so I'm loving this. What is the cost of stigma when it comes to autism? So, what are some of the personal or psychological costs to the stigma that you receive from society, work, whatever the culture is?
I can answer. I thought Suchin was about
Yeah, I
to
was going
answer.
to
Did
say
you
it
want
looked
to go
like
first?
Sushi was ready.
Oh, sorry, can you restate the question once more?
Surely, what do you feel is the personal cost of the stigma when it comes with autism? So it could be like a physical or a psychological cost to the stigma that surrounds autism, and possibly the things that are just not true, that are kind of put upon you by society or work or school or anything like that.
I don't think there's much of a physical cost, but there is decent toll psychologically because you're already like, I mean, naturally we're kind of can used to conformity, and I feel like a lot of you're kind it's kind of the idea of conformity and behaving like everybody else um is kind of just shoved down our throats, and kind of differences are not really accepted until recent years. So it does take an emotional toll because like it's if you're like if it takes like a lot of work, or you're just not it's just not your forte, like a lot of you're born with it, there's nothing, it's not your fault. You can still work towards said things, but I think accepting difference is the first step to like focusing on what we have, what we can control, and as autistic professionals, and what we can and how we can improve ourselves, focusing on the things that we do.
Right? I have a great sticker that says, "Don't hear what I didn't say,"
Yeah.
and I often wish I should paint it on the back of my wall because I've been accused of saying things that I didn't say, and I said, "Please take me extremely literally because I'm a very literal person. If I say something, that's exactly what I mean." And
Yeah.
that's kind of the toll for me is that sometimes, you know, people will say, "Well, this is how I took what you said," and I'm like, "That's not what I said. I Please take me very, very literally." So that's one that gets to me. Anyone else want to jump in with something else that you feel? I know, Celia, you started.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a very valid point, and I also earlier you made I believe it was you, Kurt, who said the phrase, once you meet one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. I think that's relevant here. Um, there are so many people that have this impression of what an autistic person is, and at my currently the place I work at, again, it being a neurodiversity department, we're kind of you're going in with a good mindset off the rip, so that's not an issue. But back when I worked both in security and I worked in retail, that was a common issue that came up a lot with myself and other people I knew who were on the spectrum. Where I mean, I had a manager who, upon hearing I was autistic, got mad and said, no, you're not autistic. There's no way you can talk. There's no way. And I have a niece who's autistic. So like, how dare you say this? And I had to calmly break it down for her, and sort of explain like that's not the case for everybody. There are levels to this, and and really it's important, really important to try to break down those barriers, and that's not an easy task. Obviously, it's so much easier said than done. um, but also part of it too is sometimes, as I mentioned previously, sometimes there are just these sort of norms that are kind of baked in to interactions, that someone who is neurodivergent just immediately fails, like the idea of maintaining eye contact. I've met people who think, why aren't you looking at me? That's just so weird, and it's like, I did, if I'm staring right at you, it's going to be a lot more uncomfortable for both you and me. Right. So I think it's a very interesting question, and it really is quite the challenge of like, what exactly are all of these stigmas? How do you break it down? And how do you really change people's minds?
Great. Had a fantastic question here that I'm going to read, and feel free, whoever'd like to come off the mic. How has knowing about your neurodivergence, your autism, helped you embrace your identity? So now that we know that it's not a disease, now that we know that it's not this, terrible thing, and especially with some really great research lately, it really just is a specific way of existing and acting and behaving. How has this helped you discover yourself?
I think I'll answer just because I can almost see something in this and the last question. Like, I think if you take it in a positive light, then it can offer a lot of backwards and forwards insight and like a reset, which, if you're in a challenging part of your life, can do that. Um, and that can really help you redefine relationships. Again, it's not about like a label or things like that, but you can like reanalyze or rethink about things like, and I guess I'll merge that with the previous question a bit in the sense that like sometimes there's like a positive stigma that can still be harmful about, and I find more common, like even like with people who are trying to help in the recruiting world and stuff, about people on the spectrum, kind of being excellent analysts, but challenging or challenged as leaders. So like, and like you just watch TV and like, there is like an accepted stereotype now that's positive, without getting even into like intersectionality and gender and things like that. But like that's not the only approach. And again, so it can become harmful as well. So like thinking about that and even in this question, like I found that like I hate to live diagnose people, but like I've seen insight into other people, even like especially people who don't fall into that stereotype. Excellent like executives and leaders that have kind of inspired me to think, okay, maybe there's something there or something I can pull from to be a different kind of leader, to fall outside that stereotype. And so yeah, it gives you the power to like define how you fit into things rather than just like are put into kind of the box of the label, right? If you understand, right, and can take that somewhere that evolves, right?
Yeah, interesting. I'm somebody who cringes at whenever I hear the word superpower. When people are like, "Oh, you're autistic, you've got
Yes.
superpowers," I'm like, I can't see through walls, and and sometimes I cry when I'm at the gym. So I'm not really sure if you think it's a superpower. So yeah, superpowers are it's a tricky term because once again we have spiky profiles. We can be incredibly good at certain things, but then very common everyday things may be the toughest aspects in the world. So, sorry, Celia, you seem like you wanted to jump into that as well.
No, I agree with you 100%. And that was exactly what I was thinking the whole time is the comment of oh wow, it's like a superpower what you guys have going on. It's and you kind of it's awkward, right? You kind of have to thanks, like, I
Yeah,
guess. Um, but I think yeah, sorry that I lost my train of thought there. Um, yeah.
great. All right. So we'll take one other question. We'll do this really quickly, and then if anyone can offer in within 60 seconds, and then we've got a quick wrap up. But any recommendations when requesting accommodations, and actually, how did you find out what you needed? All right, I'm going to jump in. There's a great website called Ask Jan. If you don't have anything at your company that can help, we at Salesforce have an AI tool that can help us find accommodations for you. That way you don't have to ask your manager or anything like that. But there is a great website called Ask Jan, and on there you can type in things that may be troubling to you, and they can suggest possible accommodations that can go with it. So the best thing is really ask around, talk to people in your community. But what may work, as we all said, what may work for one person won't work for everyone. So feel free to try and find out what works for you. All right. So the last thing is somebody asked, how do we keep in touch? Is there anyone here that is okay with people connecting with them via LinkedIn? Raise your hand if you can. I'm welcome to it. Feel free to find us. Oh, there you go. It's unanimous. So that's a great way to connect with us. So if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn. So, all right. Well, I will hand it back to Renee.
Thanks, Kurt.
Great. Thank, thank you so much. This was an amazing and very insightful conversation. Kurt, thank you for suggesting this format. I think it led us to some really interesting dialogue. Suchin, Tyler, and Selena, thank you for joining us. And we're so appreciative of your candor and willingness to share your experiences. So I appreciate everyone joining. If you're joining us as a person with a disability, join the network. A lot of these questions that you're talking about, we can help you with. And we have a coach on our team who you can you can schedule some time with and practice some of these conversations that you might be having. So thank you again for joining and wishing you a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Renee, have a good weekend.
Thank you so
Everyone.
much, everyone. You all
Bye.
have a great weekend. Bye bye.